This video is going to cover providers, which is a technical term and the definition within HMIS, enter data as or EDA access, and visibility. So a provider is a term within HMIS that is used to describe and organize data into groups for data entry and reporting purposes. There are two different types of providers within HMIS. One is your home provider. So you'll hear that phrase throughout your trainings with HMIS, but also when you have meetings for HMIS. So your home provider is where your account sits in the system. Every user who has a license is assigned to a home provider. It usually has to do with the provider you will be doing most of your data entry for, but it also is attached to the grant that provides your salary and most of your the coverage of your license and your position within your agency. The second type of provider in the system is called a project provider. A project provider is intended for data entry purposes, and it typically represents a specific project type or grant that your agency receives in order to provide those services to people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Everyone will have a home provider. Your home provider could be a project provider as well. Generally, project providers has a project type name or acronym associated with that provider. You may also have access to multiple project providers in HMIS. So when this happens and you're doing data entry, you must change your provider to the project provider you're doing data entry for. To locate your home provider on your home page, it's shown at the top left side of your home screen. This is the provider you're entering data as for when you initially log in. You will not see this provider on your enter data as access list. So you'll never need to change your provider to that identified home provider. You're always going to be entering data as that provider when you first log into the system. However, you could have access to multiple project level providers that you are responsible to do data entry for. To change your enter data as provider, you'll go to the top right side of your screen. You will see a little, looks like a piece of paper icon with a little face. You're going to click on the term enter data as when you're changing your provider. If you do have data entry access to multiple project level providers, you will see a list of those providers show up in this box. If you do not see any additional providers listed in this box, that means you only have access to enter data as one single project provider, and that's your home provider. When changing your enter data as within HMIS, simply click on the gray plus sign next to the provider name you want to use. Once you do that, you will see next to the phrase enter data as is that project level provider, which is right above the backdate mode. To remove or change your enter data as provider back to your home provider, you will simply click on that project provider's name. So in this example, it's CC Butternut Crossing. Once you click on that name, it'll take you back out into your home provider. And in this example, it's CC Men's Shelter. So when trying to decide or think about which provider you need to access or what a provider is in HMIS, it's like a costume and a lens. So whenever you're entering data into HMIS, you have to put on the right costume and you have to be looking through the right lens in order to see information for that provider. So your costume is what you need to change into when you're entering data as, and your visibility for that provider is like the glasses for that provider. So if there is no release of information for some of the information within HMIS, If there's not an ROI for that specific project level provider, you will not be able to see the information in HMIS. So visibility, this is another representation or example of when I talk about visibility, and you'll hear that term used as well through your time in HMIS. An example would be if you had a rapid rehousing provider, a homelessness prevention, emergency shelter, and food pantry program. Each provider can see client level data and information that they entered under that provider. They don't need a release of information. They have access to that provider. They're in the system entering data as that provider, so they can see that client level data that's within that project level provider. However, in order for the rapid rehousing provider to see any information entered by the homelessness prevention, the emergency shelter, or the food pantry program, there must be an HMIS ROI that has been signed by the client, verbally acknowledged by the client, and entered into HMIS. That electronic release allows the system to identify individuals who have agreed for their information to be shared and visible across providers and agencies within HMIS. And without the ROI, the information will just simply stay within that home project level provider.